Imagine a world without books or signs. This was humanity's reality for most of its time on Earth. Then, in ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians invented writing. This invention fundamentally changed what it meant to be human, creating a divide between prehistory and history. Before writing, we can only guess at the lives of ancient people. After writing, people could speak to us across thousands of years, recording their triumphs and struggles. History, as we know it, had begun. This simple act is arguably the most important invention in human history. Without writing, the world we live in today would be unimaginable. It is the story of the ancient secret that truly changed everything. Before writing, human life was governed by the limits of memory. Imagine running a city or passing down knowledge with only your mind. All information was memorized and passed on through speech. Stories and traditions were told and retold. Oral traditions are powerful, but vulnerable. A forgotten detail could alter a story forever. There was no way to keep accurate long-term records. This made complex trade and administration nearly impossible. Communication across distance was another huge barrier. This kept societies small and isolated. The world was bound by what people could personally remember. These were clever solutions to a fundamental problem, but they had their limits. We lacked the tool to give our knowledge permanence. The stage was set for a revolution. The change emerged from Sumer, a region in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Around 5,500 years ago, Sumerians were building the world's first cities like Uruk and Ur. These urban centers with thousands of inhabitants, grand temples, and complex social structures created unprecedented problems. The old ways of relying on memory were no longer enough. This economic need sparked the invention of writing. Simple pictures, or pictograms, were scratched onto wet clay tablets. These early records were ledgers, lists of goods and quantities. For the first time, transactions could be recorded and stored, creating a permanent record. This was the moment history began to be written. They were simply trying to solve a practical problem. But in doing so, they stumbled upon an invention that would unlock humanity's potential. Before writing, our ancestors lived in a world of fleeting moments. It was a world constructed from sound and breath. Knowledge, stories, laws, and history existed only in the air before vanishing. Knowledge was passed through the spoken word, constantly repeated to keep it alive. This society relied on human memory, both remarkable and unreliable. Passed down through generations in songs and stories, oral traditions were the bedrock of society, providing identity and purpose. This library of human experience was held in the minds of the living, vulnerable to time. People used mnemonic devices, rhyme and rhythm to recall information. But this world of memory had limits. Knowledge could be lost forever. A new technology was needed to break this cycle. In a world without writing, certain individuals became incredibly important: the elders, storytellers, priests, and poets. They were the living archives, the keepers of knowledge, tasked with remembering and passing on traditions. Training was a long, arduous process beginning in childhood. Apprentices learned stories, genealogies, laws, and rituals, memorizing everything. They used songs, poems, and physical objects as memory aids. Power was held by those who controlled information, the elders and priests. Knowledge was a protected commodity held in the minds of a select few. Before writing, agreements relied on personal bonds. Witnesses were essential to ensure promises were kept within tight-knit communities. Breaking one's word led to ostracization. As societies grew, this system broke down. Disputes arose, and justice depended on unreliable memory. This uncertainty hindered trade and governance. Tax collection relied on memory, vulnerable to error and corruption. Fragile agreements limited cooperation on large projects. Misunderstandings could derail entire projects. Before writing, communication was limited by the reach of a voice or the speed of a messenger. Messages were only as good as the messenger. Details were often lost or changed. Governing large territories was incredibly difficult. Societies remained small and isolated. Trade was slow, and news unreliable. Abstract thought was constrained. Knowledge was stuck in a loop, hindering progress. This was the world of the Sumerians, rich in culture but hitting its limits. Their growing cities and complex society created problems that memory and speech couldn't solve. They were at a breaking point, needing a new way to manage information. They needed permanent, reliable, transportable words. The stage was set for writing. The story of writing begins in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, now modern-day Iraq. The Sumerians were pioneers, responsible for an astonishing number of firsts. They built the first cities and developed the first codes of law. Their society was dynamic and rapidly growing more complex, thanks to their mastery of the environment. They built intricate systems to irrigate the land, leading to food surpluses and specialization. Cities were dominated by ziggurats, the administrative and economic heart. This complexity presented a new problem that couldn't be solved with old tools. They needed a new technology, a tool for managing information, which would lead them to their greatest invention of all. The central problem facing the Sumerians was one of plenty. Their irrigation farming produced huge harvests, far more than needed. This surplus was brought to temples as tax. In return, the temple distributed rations to its workers. Managing this system was an immense logistical challenge. Imagine being a temple official, tracking farmers, workers, and rations. Oral agreements were unreliable, and memory was insufficient. Administrators needed a foolproof, objective way to record information. Simple systems were inadequate. They needed to record quantities, commodities, people, and events. This pressure was the direct catalyst for the invention of writing. The Sumerians used small clay tokens for accounting. Each token shape represented a specific commodity. To secure records, they put tokens inside a clay ball, a bulla. Parties sealed the bulla with personal seals. Disputes were resolved by breaking the bulla and counting tokens. They then pressed tokens into the bullas outside, eventually realizing the tokens inside were unnecessary. This led to flattened clay tablets and the birth of writing. The ledger was born. The transition from tokens to marks on clay tablets marked the point where information storage became purely symbolic. Early tablets used pictograms, simplified pictures of objects. Numbers were represented by stylus marks. These first documents were simple administrative records. Scribes streamlined the system, replacing the stylus with a wedge-shaped one. This made writing faster and neater, evolving into cuneiform. Signs began to represent sounds, allowing them to spell out words phonetically. Writing could now capture speech, exploding its potential beyond accounting. It was used to record laws, send letters, and document events. They had created a system to capture human thought, reshaping society and giving birth to history. Early Sumerian writing began as pictures, far more intuitive than the angular cuneiform we know today. These pictograms were simplified drawings. Scribes used wet clay and a pointed tool to sketch things like barley, fish, or jars of oil, alongside numerical marks. It was a visual system, a logical first step in making language visible. These tablets served as ledgers for temple economies, recording the flow of goods. However, drawing in wet clay was slow and messy. Around 3000 BC, scribes shifted to a wedge-shaped stylus, pressing it into the clay. This created the neat, wedge-shaped impressions of cuneiform. This shift was driven by practicality and the need for speed. The new signs were more abstract, paving the way for writing to represent more than just physical objects. The primary tool of the Sumerian scribe was the stylus, crafted from a reed harvested from the marshes. One end was carefully cut to form a sharp triangular tip. This gave cuneiform its name, from the Latin cuneus, meaning wedge. The scribe would press the stylus into soft, damp clay. The tip and pressure determined the mark's size and form. Mesopotamia was rich in clay, the paper of the ancient world. Once complete, tablets dried in the sun. Important documents were baked, making them as hard as stone. The wedge-based system was successful because a trained scribe could produce symbols quickly. This combination defined writing for nearly 3,000 years. The durability of baked clay tablets is a gift to modern historians. Millions have survived, providing an unparalleled window into a vanished civilization. The greatest breakthrough in writing was representing sound. Early systems were limited. How could you write a name or abstract idea? The solution was the rebus principle, using a sign for the sound of the word. For example, B and leaf for belief. Sumerians used this, like A for water. This transformed writing's potential, enabling scribes to spell any word. It became a true extension of speech, capturing language's nuances. This phonetic leap made it a fully flexible communication system. Scribes built a vast syllabary, using signs as logograms or phonograms, complex but incredibly powerful. The secret to writing everything was unlocked. By 2600 BC, cuneiform was a complex system where a single sign could be a logogram, like king, or a phonogram, like bar. Some signs were determinatives indicating a word's category. Scribes, elite intellectuals, mastered math, law, and literature in schools called edabas. Cuneiform, a triumph of ingenuity, evolved from pictures to record complex thought. Used for over 3,000 years, even after Sumerian died out, it was adapted by other civilizations. Cuneiform marked a new era for humanity. Writing's earliest form wasn't for poets. It was the bureaucrat's toolkit. Born of economic necessity, its primary function was managing Sumerian temple and palace economies. Most early clay tablets are administrative documents, meticulous records of daily life. These tablets reveal a society obsessed with accounting, striving to impose order on a thriving urban economy. They are the spreadsheets of the ancient world, capturing the flow of wealth that sustained the first cities. Writing managed this complex system. Scribes recorded every transaction, creating a verifiable record. These texts detail work contracts, loan agreements, and inventories. This data-driven system was made possible by cuneiform. Scribes were critical. Their unglamorous work was the bedrock of Sumerian civilization. They ensured taxes were collected and resources allocated efficiently. Writing created a public memory, an institutional mind. As Sumerian cities grew, the old ways of resolving disputes became insufficient. A more formal system of justice was required, and writing provided the perfect tool. One of the most significant early uses of cuneiform was to record laws. Rulers created a clear, consistent, and impartial standard of justice for everyone. The oldest surviving law code is that of Ur-Nammu, around 2100 BC. His laws cover a wide range of issues, from assault and theft to divorce and agricultural disputes. This represented a shift to state-administered justice, where punishments were standardized. Court proceedings were meticulously recorded by scribes. Writing transformed law into a body of recorded knowledge, creating a stable framework. While early writing served official purposes, its potential for personal communication quickly emerged. Scribes began writing letters, connecting people across distances. Merchants could send messages home, soldiers could communicate with commanders. These small tablets sealed in clay envelopes carried private messages. These letters reveal human concerns, complaints, requests, and health inquiries. Cylinder seals served as personal signatures, authenticating documents. These intricately carved seals, depicting gods or daily life, were unique and unforgeable. This use of writing strengthened social and economic bonds, making trade reliable and connecting families. This ability to send personal messages transformed society, bringing people closer. The Sumerians began preserving their culture and wisdom by creating permanent records. This led to literature and the establishment of the world's first archives and libraries. Scribes copied and collected important texts, creating repositories of knowledge. Archaeologists discovered vast collections of tablets, carefully organized. These archives contained king lists, chronicles, and the Epic of Gilgamesh. These texts are the oldest literature in the world, giving us insight into the Sumerian worldview. These collections served as centers of learning, transforming knowledge for future generations. The genius of the Sumerian writing system was so profound that it was destined to outlive the Sumerians themselves. As political power in Mesopotamia shifted, new groups came to dominate the region. The first and most significant of these were the Akkadians, a Semitic-speaking people who lived to the north of Sumer. Around 2334 BC, their ambitious king, Sargon of Akkad, conquered the Sumerian city-states and forged the world's first true empire. Sargon and his successors now faced a new challenge: how to govern a large multicultural empire where people spoke different languages. They found their answer in the technology of the people they had conquered. They adopted cuneiform. This was a remarkable moment in the history of writing. The Akkadians took a system that had been designed for the unique, agglutinative Sumerian language and adapted it to write their own, completely different Semitic language. This was not a simple task. It would be like trying to write English using Chinese characters. The Akkadian scribes kept many of the Sumerian logograms, the signs that stood for whole words, but they began to use the phonetic syllabic signs far more extensively. This allowed them to spell out Akkadian words and represent the grammatical structures of their own tongue, which were very different from Sumerian. The Akkadian Empire used cuneiform as a powerful tool of administration to hold their vast territories together. Scribes, now writing in the Akkadian language, were sent to every corner of the empire. They recorded tax revenues, managed supplies for the army, and transmitted the king's commands to distant governors. By using a single standardized writing system, the Akkadian rulers could create a unified and efficient bureaucracy that spanned their entire domain. Writing was no longer just a tool for city-state management. It had become the essential technology for running a large-scale, multilingual empire, binding diverse peoples under a single administrative authority. Even after the Akkadian Empire fell, the use of cuneiform to write the Akkadian language continued. Akkadian became the dominant language of Mesopotamia for well over 1,000 years, and cuneiform was its script. The later empires of the Babylonians and the Assyrians, both of whom spoke dialects of Akkadian, continued this tradition. They built upon the foundation laid by the Sumerians and Akkadians, using cuneiform to write their own famous law codes, like Hammurabi's, and to record their own epic stories and historical annals. The Sumerian invention had successfully been passed on, proving its incredible adaptability. The influence of cuneiform did not stop at the borders of Mesopotamia. During the Late Bronze Age, roughly from 1500 to 1200 BC, the Akkadian language, written in cuneiform, became the lingua franca of the entire ancient Near East. It was the international language of diplomacy, trade, and high-level communication. Kings and pharaohs from Egypt, the Hittite Empire in Anatolia, what we know today as modern Turkey, the kingdoms of Syria, and even the island of Cyprus all used Akkadian cuneiform to correspond with one another. A pharaoh in Thebes wanting to communicate with a Hittite king in Hattusa would have his message composed by a scribe in this shared script. This remarkable fact was brought to light by a stunning archaeological discovery in 1887 in Egypt. At a site called Amarna, a local woman found a cache of over 300 cuneiform tablets. These were the royal diplomatic archives of the pharaohs, Akhenaten and Amenhotep III. The letters were from vassal kings in Canaan and Syria, and from the great rival powers of the age Babylonia, Assyria, and the Hittites. They reveal a vibrant and complex international community, all connected by the Mesopotamian writing system. The letters discuss treaties, military alliances, royal marriages, and frantic requests for gold and other precious goods. The use of cuneiform as a diplomatic tool shows how deeply the Mesopotamian invention had penetrated the ancient world. It required that every major royal court, from the Nile to Anatolia, had to employ scribes who were highly trained in this foreign and complex writing system. These scribes had to be fluent in the Akkadian language and masters of the hundreds of cuneiform signs. This created an international class of educated elites who shared a common literary culture and a common medium of communication, allowing for a level of sophisticated international relations that would have been impossible otherwise. This widespread adoption was a testament to the power and prestige of Mesopotamian culture. For centuries, Mesopotamia was seen as the center of civilization, and its writing system was the gold standard. Other powerful kingdoms, like the Hittites and the Elamites in Persia, also adapted the cuneiform script to write their own languages, just as the Akkadians had done. They added new phonetic values for the signs to fit the sounds of their own tongues, further demonstrating the script's amazing flexibility. The Sumerian invention had become a truly universal technology for the entire civilized world of its time. While cuneiform dominated the great empires, a revolutionary new idea was taking shape on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, in the land of Canaan. The peoples living here, including the Phoenicians, were maritime traders who needed a simpler, more efficient way to write. The cuneiform system, with its hundreds of signs, took years to master and was controlled by a small class of professional scribes. For busy merchants and sailors, this was just too cumbersome. They needed a system that was easy to learn, quick to write, and could be used by ordinary people to keep records and write letters. Sometime in the 2nd millennium BC, these Semitic-speaking peoples developed a radical new approach to writing. Instead of using signs to represent whole words or syllables, they created a system where each sign represented a single consonant sound. This was the world's first alphabet. It was a stunning simplification. Instead of learning hundreds of complex cuneiform signs, a person only needed to memorize around 22 simple symbols to be able to write down anything they could say. This was a true democratization of writing, taking it out of the hands of the elite scribes and putting it into the hands of the common person. This new alphabetic script did not appear out of thin air. It was likely inspired by the principles of both Mesopotamian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphs. The inventors saw that a sign could represent a sound, a principle at the heart of the rebus system used in both older scripts. But they took this idea to its logical conclusion, breaking down syllables into their smallest component parts, a single sound. The shapes of their letters were also likely adapted from simplified Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was a brilliant synthesis of existing ideas, streamlined into a system of unparalleled efficiency. The Phoenicians, being master sailors and traders, carried their revolutionary alphabet with them across the entire Mediterranean. They established trading posts and colonies in Cyprus, North Africa, Sicily, and Spain. Everywhere they went, they brought their writing system with them. Local peoples saw the immense advantages of this simple script and quickly adopted and adapted it for their own languages. The Phoenician alphabet became the direct ancestor of the Hebrew and Aramaic scripts, and most consequentially for the rest of the world, it was passed on to the Greeks, who would make one final crucial adjustment. The Phoenician alphabet reached Greece around the 9th century BC, where the Greeks, lacking their own script, quickly adopted and adapted it. They ingeniously repurposed unused Phoenician consonant symbols to represent vowels, creating the first true alphabet, one symbol for every sound. This innovation made reading and writing easier, sparking a surge in Greek literacy and creativity. The Greek alphabet spread to the Etruscans and then to Rome, evolving into the Latin alphabet we use today. Every time you read or write in a modern Western language, you're using direct descendants of those ancient symbols. The journey from Sumerian clay tablets to our alphabet is a story of continuous adaptation, connecting us to the very origins of writing. For thousands of years, Sumerian secrets stayed hidden in Iraq. Their cities were forgotten, and their writing was lost. But in the 1800s, people looking for old cities from the Bible instead found huge collections of clay tablets in ancient ruins. One of the most important discoveries was King Ashurbanipal's library in Nineveh. It had more than 30,000 cuneiform tablets about everything you could think of. These tablets saved the words and stories of old Mesopotamia, like the Epic of Gilgamesh. But before anyone could understand these words, the strange wedge-shaped writing needed to be figured out. The tablets were like a locked treasure chest of human history, just waiting for someone to crack their code. The race to read cuneiform had started. Deciphering cuneiform was a global scholarly quest, cracked thanks to the trilingual Behistun inscription in Iran. Scholars like Grotefend and Rawlinson identified royal names and matched signs to sounds, using the simpler Old Persian text as a key. Rawlinson risked his life to copy the inscription, enabling the full translation of Old Persian and eventually the more complex Babylonian script. By the 1850s, independent scholars produced matching translations, proving the code was cracked. Humanity could finally read the languages of ancient Mesopotamia. The libraries of clay tablets were unlocked, revealing the lost world of the Sumerians. The ancient voices trapped in clay could speak again. Deciphering cuneiform revealed the Sumerians' foundational role in civilization, giving us the first laws, epics, and records. Their invention of writing enabled the accumulation and organization of knowledge, the roots of literature, history, and bureaucracy. The Epic of Gilgamesh and ancient chronicles gave humanity a memory beyond any individual. Every modern system of information management traces back to those first clay tablets. The idea of using symbols to represent language evolved into the alphabets we use today. Every written word connects us to the Sumerian scribes who started it all. Sumerian writing, let humanity see its own reflection, preserving thoughts, stories, and history for generations. What began as a tool for counting grain became the medium for law, art, and diplomacy. Clay tablets are time capsules, holding the authentic voices of our ancestors. Their rediscovery was a second revolution, restoring a lost chapter of human history. The Sumerians' legacy is not in monuments, but in millions of tablets, a library of beginnings. Their practical invention unlocked philosophy, science, and the world we know today. The quiet work of Sumerian scribes changed the course of civilization. The invention of writing in Sumer began an unbroken thread that runs to our digital age. Cuneiform's adaptability spread literacy and record-keeping across empires, then evolved into the Phoenician, Greek, and Latin alphabets. Today we write in code and pixels, but the purpose remains: to record, communicate, and preserve knowledge. The Sumerians unlocked humanity's potential to defeat time and build on the wisdom of the past. Their invention was the turning point, when we learn to write our own story. And that story continues every time we put words to page or screen.